All right, man, peace. So, brothers, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I did a video called Why the Rise in Infidelity, in which I attempted to explain, according to my perspective, why there seems to be such a high rate of interchangeability when it comes to your significant other and what we call quote unquote relationships today in this Western world or American society, Europeanized society, really Babylonian world that we're living in today. And there was a particular quote unquote relationship expert slash relationship anthropologist who works for the Kinsey Institute by the name of Helen Fisher, who was spreading as much propaganda and misinformation as well as disinformation as she could to try to once again demonize the role of the masculine principle and overly exalt the role of the feminine, or what they call the quote unquote divine feminine. Because behind closed doors, all of these psychological experts, relationship quote unquote experts, television anthropologists, historians, whatever you want to call them, they're all adherents within the craft. They all venerate the quote unquote mother goddess and the horn god. They just make television appearances to make the spells that they cast to the masses seem official, learned, or research, whatever you want to call it. I caught a very interesting segment here in which we're going to see the same quote unquote relationship expert, Helen Fisher, and she's going to detail how the MeToo movement, which is really the revenge of the quickly expiring and unattractive females, has caused a reshaping, a redefining of what we consider to be the relationship rapport or dynamic between men and women today. I also want you brothers to pay very close attention to many of the graphics that they use in these segments, because as I always state, there is a supraliminal level of programming and a subliminal level of programming. There's a supraliminal level of communication as well as a subliminal level of communication. Even though she's going to be speaking on what we call relationship issues today and how they've been affected by the MeToo movement, pay very close attention to the pictorials in the background. They're almost all going to show a quote unquote black female with a Caucasian male, because as I've stated in other videos, they're making a concerted attempt to ionize the dynamic or the rapport between the black woman and the white man in an attempt to ostracize the quote unquote black man or so-called black man. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Study out this morning looks at how the Me Too movement is affecting dating culture. 51% of American single men say the movement made them change how they act. That's a core.
Yes, 51% of quote unquote single men have decided that they're not going to speak to women unless it's in an environment that is leisurely or already established for the creation of an amorous dynamic between men and women. Men have figured out, as we always do, because men are creatures of adaptation, that once the woman decides that she's going to dive head over heels into the newest movement, into the newest methodology to achieve as much attention as they can, of course being prompted by the media, men have decided that in turn they're going to sit back, watch their surroundings, and see how things play out. And of course, the people who are going to lose in the end are going to be the woman, because the woman has the mindset of a pawn. For the most part, women have the minds of pawns because they're two-dimensional thinkers, and they don't truly grasp the gravity of what they're doing or what they're being told to do until the very end. And that is why it is so easy to utilize them as such, because as soon as you give the woman any type of reward or any type of immediate gratification for what you're telling her to do, she's almost always going to do it, especially if she believes that she's going to get glorification or attention or some type of idolization from it, because that's how they operate. That is why the serpent came to Eve in the garden. The stories of the scriptures are meant to be as examples for brothers to learn from and always reflect on, because they reverberate down to this very day. But just getting back to the point, it states here that 51% of men act differently overall. I've stated in other videos, brothers should not be trying to have serious conversations with women in their workplace. I always stated when I was in corporate America, I do not have discussions on religion, politics, race, or feminism. I'm not concerned about those four topics. Do not try to include me in your silly low-level conversation on those topics within the workplace, because they almost always blow up in your face. And it's normally a woman who's going to decide to run to management or to human resources because she was quote unquote offended by something that someone said. So that's why the woman, unfortunately for them, they don't realize this. They're going to be viewed as an anathema, but covertly they're going to be viewed as an anathema in the workplace because of their attention mongering, because of the fact that there's such high risk and low reward. In general, the woman is not as proficient and the jobs that she seeks after in the corporate workspace as the average man is. A lot of people might not like that. It is what it is. And the same way, if a man tries to act as a nurturer and a guide in the household, he's not going to be as good as the average woman is.
According to the new study by the dating company Match, 59% of all singles said the MeToo movement is important to them.
I agree. I think the MeToo movement is very important because what it does is it establishes exactly what the psychological profile is of the average woman today. It has made women very comfortable in expressing themselves openly as opposed to hiding some of their psychoses that they have. So many dudes out here do not find out that their woman is batshit crazy until they're in a relationship with them for 6 months to a year. You moved in with someone that you had no idea had these psychological issues. They're narcissists, they're sadists, they're abusive verbally or mentally. You didn't figure it out until you moved in with her. What the Me Too movement has done is it's made women more unabashed about the mental issues that they tend to have. So hopefully more men are starting to raise their level of mental acuity and do a better job, do their due diligence in who they choose to be in a relationship with.
Nearly half agreed it started a much needed conversation. Match.
No one is conversing about Me Too other than simps and females who are toxically feminine. Real men, once again, just check out the lay of the land and fall back.
Surveyed more than 5,000 single men and women from age 18 to 99. Really, 99.
Now, brothers, just to pay attention, this first graphic, as we can see here, seems to be a Caucasian woman with a Caucasian man, or maybe an Asian or Hispanic woman with a Caucasian man. But pay very close attention to all of the pictorials that they use in the background.
Helen Fisher is a biological anthropologist and the chief scientific advisor for Match, and she joins us first on CTM. Helen, good to see you.
Helen Fisher, witch and pathological liar. Once again, she was a featured speaker in the previous video that I did on this topic or something similar to this topic by the name of Why the Rise in Infidelity. And she was attempting to allege that in other cultures, she had examined 42 other cultures and she was able to study their relationship archetypes as men, quote unquote, committed adultery in these other cultures, not understanding that what they were actually doing was engaging in what they call today in America, quote unquote, polygamy, but actually something that is fully acceptable in cultures around the world, especially cultures of color, that being a man having multiple wives. There's nothing wrong with it. But she called it adultery because that is what these quote unquote European researchers and scientists do. They attempt to demonize the cultures of the indigenous people of the world so that they can correlate it with quote unquote savagery. They're the allegedly enlightened ones.
You point out at the outset that this looked at, it doesn't matter who you are attracted to in this case. People are all right. It's just how do you feel about the Me Too movement? How did it affect you?
Right.
We said 59% of singles find the movement to be important, but when you look at men alone, it's less than half. Mm-hmm. So is that enough to actually change how we date?
Yeah, well,
it's definitely going to change how you quote unquote date because, to be quite frank with you, I don't understand why men are still dating, period. Why the hell would you still be going out on dates? For the most part, it's so easy to bed down most of these females because they have the mindset of a whore. And many people might become offended by what I'm saying. It is what it is. When a female states that she is a quote unquote strong, independent female, no matter what race she is, that means that she is quote unquote owning her sexuality. That means that she has bedded down multiple men and most possibly women as well in her sexual history. So you're spending hundreds of dollars on dates to do what? To fall into the same slot that 20 other dudes before you fell into? Makes no sense whatsoever. With so many of these females today, you exchange text messages with them after, of course, you exchange phone numbers. And within 2 or 3 exchanges of a text message, you're getting photos of their private areas. Just facts. And I'm sure that a lot of you brothers have experienced this. So, I mean, if you want to go out on a quote unquote date to get to know someone, or if a female seems to be exemplary in comparison to the average quote unquote female, you can. It is what it is. But what the Me Too movement has done and what hyper-feminism has done is it's truly taken away the allure of the quote unquote date or courtship or what have you, because most of these females today are so masculine. You're not even really interested in what they think about anything because you pretty much already know. Number one, they're toxically feminine. Number two, they're globalists. Number three, they play the racialist card. They act as if they're concerned with the plight of the so-called black man when they're really not. We know that they're pro-abortion. We know that they don't really believe in a patriarchal God, much less a patriarchal figure in the household. They call what's going on around them the universe. They dabble in Wicca or witchcraft. That is the average Western woman today, no matter what race she is. So there's really not much of a need to go out on a quote-unquote date with them, because that's what is going on with the majority of them. Are there exceptions to that rule? Absolutely. There are good women out here, just like there are needles in haystacks. They're just difficult to find, but they do exist.
51% of men have changed their behavior. 40% of men have changed their behavior at work, and 33% of men have changed their behavior on a date. And
of course, because once again, if a man decides that he does want to go on a quote-unquote date with the woman, he's going to allow her to make the first move, because for the most part, you don't have to work that hard. And many of these females are so desperate. Even if you have to wait 2 or 3 dates to get sex from this one, there's another one texting your phone who wants to give you some ass just off GP. So the modern day female has basically flooded the market with her vagina. That's why their value has depreciated so greatly, but they do not understand that. Once you declare that you're going to quote unquote own your sexuality, that means that you're no longer of value, because you've already experienced intercourse with other men. So what a man of wisdom already understands is that unless this woman experiences some high level revelation, your relationship is going to end up the same way that her previous 15 to 20 relationships ended up. Because many of these females destroy their own relationships. They are self-saboteurs, either through self-doubt or some level of mental issue that they have that causes them to destroy their own lives. The essential nature of the female that follows after the mother goddess is to embrace the nature of Kali or Kalima, the mother goddess of destruction. You see it throughout their lives. The only thing that they're able to maintain is their jobs, because they hold on to their jobs as a sense of self-empowerment and the little bit of sanity that they have. Everything else they destroy after a while.
actually, social scientists have been tracking social change for decades, and that's a...
No, not really. Social scientists have not been tracking social change. They've been engineering social change.
Huge change. I mean, if you get people to stop eating, try to ask people to stop eating sugar, or get some more exercise, or, you know, drink less, or something, very few people really change their behavior. This is a massive social change.
Do we know how?
Well, what do you expect? Men, women, and children have been inundated. They've been flooded with this misunderstanding of what male and females are supposed to do when it comes to interrelating with one another. Everywhere you turn, on the television, in the movie theaters, in the music, we're being told that women deserve to be heard, respected, cherished, and believed no matter what they say, no matter what their track record is, and that men are oppressors and they do not deserve the opportunity to rule or administrate in any way, shape, or form, because each and every man is just a demonic microcosm of this quote-unquote patriarchy that has done nothing but destroy the earth, while inventing schools, buildings, cars, bicycles, establishing frameworks in societies, so on and so forth.
How their behavior is changing?
Yes, they're being more reserved. They're being more careful. They're trying to make sure that their jokes are appropriate, that they have the right kinds of conversations. And what's so...
Or they're just ignoring females, which a lot of men today are starting to do. A lot of men are starting to evaluate the woman and ask himself, what is she worth as opposed to the detriment that she could possibly be? Does her benefit outweigh her detriment? And many men today are choosing to just chill out. The woman is never going to be a problem for men in this society to get, as long as you're proficient in being a man. Do you have your shit together? Do you have a steady income? Do you maintain your hygiene? If you do those things, you could literally walk outside and initiate a relationship with a good percentage of these females, because most of them are lonely as hell.
Interesting about it for me is that actually with this MeToo movement, 90% of men would be perfectly happy if
a woman just shut the hell up and leave them alone. That's what 90% of men would be after the MeToo movement.
Women asked them for their telephone number. 90% would be perfectly happy if women made the first sexual move and had a kiss.
But the women,
She said 90% of men would be okay if a woman asked him for his phone number. 90% of men would be okay if a woman leaned in for a kiss. Men already know that once the woman asks him for his phone number or leans in for a kiss, it's just going to escalate very quickly to stage 2 and 3, that being intercourse, and thereafter she's going to start the nitpicking phase, which itself is going to initiate the soon-to-be end of their rapport, of their interaction, of their quote-unquote relationship. So that's why men today, they're just playing along. As I've told brothers in other videos, the woman is an actress by nature. She can't even help it. It's not even necessarily willful. She's an actress by nature. Actors are known for what? Wearing costumes and putting on makeup. So are women. Actors are known for what? Being fluid with their personalities. So are women. The woman is an actress by nature. The best bet is to just play along. That should be your tact. If you want to be serious about something, be serious about your future, about yourself, and about your family. If you're able to interact with or meet a woman who is actually about something, then that's great. Do right by her, treat her well. But the average female out here is an actress. The average person out here, for the most part, in this Babylonian comedic society, is an actor/actress. They don't even know what the hell to do with themselves most of the time. Most of these dudes are spineless. They're just trying to make sure that they don't offend any of these little miniature mother goddesses out here. Quote unquote mother goddesses.
Women are doing this.
Women want both.
The women aren't doing it.
No shit. Don't women always want things both ways? We all know that they're confused by nature. They want things to be traditional, quote unquote, as they deem tradition to have been in their own revised methodology of looking at history. But they also want to be modernized when it suits them. That's the nature of the woman. She's a narcissist. Everything must go her way, how she wants it at that moment. That's why it's so important for brothers to understand the woman. Never try to change the woman. Always try to understand her, because whoever she is who she's going to be. They're not going to change unless and until they have no options. When a woman is presented with options, she's always going to, number one, choose the wrong thing. Number two, choose the quote unquote right thing, but for herself. For herself. Now, the greatest nature and aspects of the woman come out through motherhood, because the Most High gave the woman the maternal DNA so that she can help the world survive to further generations. That's truly her redeeming quality. That's why Paul said what? The woman is saved through childbearing, meaning that is her value on the earth, to be a wife and a mother, because out of that is how we have the population of the earth. But aside from that, pretty much all they're doing is causing mischief.
Thinking about this last night, I thought, should we reinstate Sadie Hawkins Day? So the women begin to try and figure out, So it's interesting.
Now, brothers, did you hear what she just stated? This is supposed to be a psychologist who studies the history of mankind, basically. Now she's saying, should we bring back Sadie Hawkins, which basically is a dance that allows boys and girls to meet. What she's really saying is that they've tinkered with society so much that, as usual with people who tinker too much, things were how they were supposed to be from the very beginning, when they were left alone and set up how the Most High meant for them to be set up.
Now, in business, women are really going for equality, whereas in courtship...
No, in business, women are going for attention. Women know deep down that they're not meant to lead. They're only trying to do it to upset the apple cart. If you work in a corporation and you see most of these females, especially on a certain level of the corporation, women do not even like to work under other women. And I'm sure that many of you brothers have had females tell you that they do not like to even discourse with women. They don't even like to have conversations with other women because they feel like they can't trust them. I've had many females tell me that. They'll claim, well, that's why I have male friends. They'll use that as an excuse and a justification to quote unquote develop platonic relations with men, because they have a very difficult time. Women in general have a very difficult time having honest and sincere interactions with one another unless they're confederate to try to tear down male hegemony. That's the only reason why women come together at all, is to tear down male rulership / male hegemony. That is the only reason. Every other interaction other than that is going to lead to some type of tumult, some type of rancor, some type of issue where things could become pugnacious very quickly. Women, sometimes women end up throwing down because they develop these little silly beefs with one another over nothing really. But the Most High created them to be petty so that they would not have the qualities to rule. He set up the men to rule.
They're still playing a much more traditional game than men.
Is it the women playing the traditional game, or is it the men being overly cautious now? I mean, are they overcorrect?
No, it's the women playing games and the man just starting to play along.
90% saying they want the woman to make the first move.
The correction is exactly the right word for it. I mean, it's a little like the stock market. There's now a correct.
Not quite a correction, more of an adaptation. Once again, men adapt. And now this is the first photo that I wanted brothers to pay very close attention to. They're making concerted attempts to try to ionize the rapport between the Caucasian man, or so-called Caucasian man, and the so-called black woman. You're going to see many pictorials that are trying to illustrate that these two components should come together, or these two demographics should come together in some way. And it's not because they necessarily belong together. It's to try to attack the so-called black man. They want to ostracize and isolate the so-called black man because they know the woman is not a threat. Once again, the woman represents a spoil of war. Whatever nation of man is in power is going to have access to all the races of women on the earth.
But what's really happening is we're seeing growing equality between the sexes. And in fact, we are shedding actually 10,000 years of our agrarian tradition. I mean,
once again, and this is something that many of these psychologists / quote unquote anthropologists, really just witches, like to do. Once again, she is an employee of the Kinsey Institute. Albert Kinsey, or I believe his name was Alfred Kinsey, pardon me. I mentioned him in the video for Why the Rise in Infidelity, and he really deserves a video all to himself because of the level of depravity that he was able to quote unquote normalize in society. He was the first person who was able to initiate a concerted movement to normalize homosexuality, lesbianism, and he made an attempt to normalize pedophilia as well, because he was a very sick individual. He was someone who went to prison systems, and he took surveys for his sexual proclivities studies, and he basically would interview men who were locked up for committing sexual crimes like incest or rape or pedophilia, things of that nature. And he would ask them questions, and he would submit the findings from those questions, from those surveys, to the board of review, and act as if he had interviewed regular people. That is why to this day they try to teach you that many of these alternative lifestyles are regular based on his findings, his quote unquote findings, really his manipulations. But as we can see here, once again, they're trying to promote that ionization mentality between the Caucasian man and the black woman. It states here, making the first move, men like 75% a woman to say hi first, 90% a woman to ask for the phone number. Why is that? It's not necessarily because men want the woman to be aggressive. It's really because men are scared of women today. They look at the woman as a very angry creature, and many of them are very angry. Why is that? Because they've embraced feminism, which basically is self-victimization. The belief that men were in power for 10,000 years, not because of their merit and because of their ingenuity, but just because they felt like oppressing the woman because she was physically weaker. And the fact of the matter is that anatomically, men were built to rule. Men are superior physically over the woman. And when I say superior physically, I'm not talking about necessarily from an anatomical perspective. When I say that, I mean, I'm not saying that the man's body is better than the woman. The man's body is built for his role. The woman's body is built for her role. She's much stronger in the lower body because she brings forth seed. The man is stronger in his upper body because he's a builder. But his body is larger and stronger than the woman's for that purpose. And his brain is larger because he's expected to come up with ideas that are going to create civilization. The woman is not. That's why the woman does what? She copies what the man establishes and tries to effeminize it. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful or denigrating to the woman. Women are beautiful and they're essential, but those are just the facts.
We used to believe a woman's place was in the home, that
And it is in the home. You know it and I know it.
the man was the head of the household till death
And he is. You know it and I know it.
do us part. And
Well, till death do us part, that used to be a part of the marriage vows. Now the reason why people are parting at death is because the woman is going to drive the man so crazy he's going to drop dead young.
Indeed, we're seeing this massive change towards general equality between the sexes. And the last part...
No, we're really not seeing any massive change towards equality between the sexes. What we're seeing is a massive propaganda attempt by the mainstream media, including the cinematic world, the television world, and the quote-unquote news media, to try to convince men that women have been done wrong in some way in this society that has been set up for them.
To really change is this, but this is a huge social movement that is moving us towards this economic, social, sexual equality between the sexes.
No, this is a huge social movement that is heading towards the final aspects or the final phases of this society. Before this whole thing ends, we're going to see transgenderism, homosexuality, lesbianism, feminism be promoted to the nth degree, and we're also going to see a real attempt to normalize or to make an appearance that is functional pederasty. I've stated this in other videos. They're going to start with young boys hitting puberty, 12, 13 years old. They're going to tell you, if he knows at 13 years old that he's a homosexual and he's in love with that 30-year-old man, who are you to tell him no? That's the same game that they use with homosexuality. That's the same tact that they're using with many of these children today as they cross-dress them and try to utilize psychological ploys and tricks to make them think that they were born the wrong gender. These are scientific experiments that we're seeing right before our eyes that they're trying to act like have nothing to do with their attempts to cast spells on the masses when they do. But once again, before this society ends, they're going to try to get society to accept pederasty, aka man-boy love. Once again, that was a tenet of Alfred Kinsey, and she works for the Kinsey Institute.
Your study said that 1/3 of young singles say their financial situation has held them back from pursuing love.
Yeah.
The reason why people's financial situations hold them back from quote-unquote pursuing love is because women do not want to have to depend on a man in the house, because they know that if they're not working and the man is working, now they have to follow his instructions. So that's really what it's about. The woman wants to be financially competitive with the man so that once they're married, if she wakes up and decides she wants to leave, she can do so.
You know, I study millennials. I'm really impressed by millennials. They're very cautious.
Millennials are not very cautious. They're very whimsical. It's a big difference. But if you want to call it cautious, it's more like untrusting. How could you trust someone when you do not know what their morals are? We're living in modern Babylon, modern Sodom and Gomorrah, modern Rome. So you don't know what your next door neighbor thinks about things. You could be someone who believes in the scriptures, and the person living next door could be a practicing witch. You have no idea, because that's how this society operates. So of course the level of trust between two people is going to be heavily compromised until you take your time to get to know exactly who they are.
And they're very ambitious. And
hey brothers, did you see that? Once again, they showed the Caucasian man with the so-called black woman.
Like they're very practical.
They're very practical. I mean, very different from my generation. I'm a baby boomer. And they're married.
No, your generation was actually much more practical. The quote-unquote baby boomer generation was the last generation to accept quote-unquote traditional roles. They were the generation that was put under the microscope by the CIA and given LSD and PCP, angel dust, marijuana. They were subjected to that mind control societal engineering project known as Woodstock, in which all of those MK assets in the music industry performed for them, and they established free love and blah, blah, blah. Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all those other people who were just assets from Laurel Canyon.
Later. I call it slow love. They're spending a lot of time. Yeah, I mean, actually, well, first they want to be just friends, then they want to move into friends with benefits. You learn a lot between the sheets, right? And then they slowly tell friends and family, and then they slowly move in together, and then they wed. And the later you marry,
then they wed, and then they get divorced.
The more likely you are to remain together. So it's a very...
Now, brothers, did you hear that? She said the later you marry, the more likely you are to stay together. I hope that many of you cats heard that, especially you brothers out there who are 21, 22 years old and think that you've met the woman of your dreams and she's 19 or 20 years old. I'm not saying to not love, not know how to love, not understand how to be open with your partner, but please understand that everything in the flesh is temporary. Please grasp that. All that being said, you might meet someone and she's 19 and you're 20, and you guys might be together for 70 years. Who the hell knows? But in this society today, where everyone is taught that they should sample everything that's out there, that they should not allow themselves to be locked down too young, especially so many of these females today, these women today, they're having conversations with their female relatives, with their homegirls. Their professors in college are telling them to explore their bodies and things of that nature. It's going to be very difficult for you to have a stable relationship unless you capitulate to her whims, unless you capitulate to the goddess complex that so many of them are getting imbued with. So it's up to you. But even she understands. When I say she, I'm talking about this quote-unquote professor, Helen Fisher, that you should be waiting a very long time. I've said this already, especially to the so-called black man. You should not even be thinking about having a child in a world like this until you're at least 35 to 40 years old. At 20 years old, you don't know shit about life. And most of these people who act as if they're going to have your back and support you are not going to be there. You're going to be subjected to quote-unquote baby mama drama. All right? If you ask anyone who had a child at 21 and then had a child at, say, 36 or 37, they'll tell you that it's a lifetime of difference in life experience, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to impart unto their child. So it's just something for you to think about.
Very interesting, solid, good movement, but they're being very careful. Just like you said, they want to make sure they're financially stable, that their career is in order before they actually catch feelings.
Absolutely. The woman needs to be financially stable and their career has to be in order so that if the man does the slightest thing that they don't like, they can run and hit the nearest exit.
I love when you say that we are built for love, in your words. 75% of those surveyed said they believe in a lifelong partnership.
Yes, and some, I've done it.
I agree. I believe that people are built for love, because without love, you cannot have true happiness. You need to have love to have true happiness. That's why you have people who, they just lose their minds when the person who they thought they loved and who they thought loved them ends up turning against them or destroying what they thought they had. That's why everything has to be done with a sense and an idea of balance. But just getting back to what he stated, is there such a thing as lifelong love? Absolutely. But you have to be with a like-minded person. That person cannot be in competition with you. And so many females today, they want to be in competition with the man. They don't want to compliment the man. They want to compete. As soon as a woman tells you that she's equal to a man and that everything is 50-50, you're supposed to run for the hills. At best, she's a concubine. All right? At best, she's a concubine because she's more concerned with trying to confront, attack, and defeat your masculine energy than she is in being a good consort to you.
Study with Match for 9 years, and it's a national study. We do not poll the Match members. It's a national representative sample of Americans based on the U.S. Census, and every year I ask that question, and some years as much as 89% of both men and women believe that when you find the right one, you can do it forever, and it's entirely possible in this day and age. The later you...
Yes, you definitely can find the right one, and you can do it forever if you both have the same understandings on life and you're not trying to compete. Once again, brothers, this is the second time that they flashed this same photo, and this is one of a bevy of photos that they've had in this segment trying to quote-unquote ionize the black female and the Caucasian male. Again, brothers, this is not for the upliftment of the black woman. This is to a degree meant to cater to her altar as a globalist, no doubt about it, because as I tell you, brothers, the liberal black female, and 95 to 98% of them are liberal no matter what they say, they have three altars. The racialist altar, where they try to act as if they're pro-blackity black. The globalist altar, in which they can become infatuated with everyone holding hands and joining hands. as well as interracial relationships, even though they try to deny that they're interested in interracial relationships. The vast majority of them are. They just don't have access to the men of the other races. Of course, part of the globalist altar is the promotion of homosexuality, lesbianism, feminism. But feminism is really an altar all its own, because that's the main altar of the liberal black woman, as it is of all liberal women. But just pay very close attention to this dynamic. This energy is going to be heavily pushed and promoted in these last days of the so-called black woman with the Caucasian man. Just like Eve in the garden, we see who she's drawn to.
Marry, the more likely you are to remain married, and that's what the young are doing. They're being very cautious, very practical, as you said,
and they're being optimistic.
Yeah. They are optimistic, and they should be, for God's sakes, you know.
Interesting that most singles meet through dating apps.
Yeah,
very interesting, fascinating.
Yes.
That's right. That dating app just might be a trap. Hey, brothers, take your time, man. Take your time. We all got to take our time in life. None of us are perfect. But don't be in a rush, because please understand that things could take a turn left very quickly. And you have to have the mental fortitude and the spiritual strength to get out the car when that thing starts to go left. But anyway, peace.